Hey everybody, this is Ryan McClanahan with HistoryThroughCards.com. Hope you're all doing very well today. I noticed while I was starting to pick up more basketball that there's a lot of guys named Bob in the Basketball Hall of Fame, and some of these guys are actually really very famous, and some of them are kind of obscure today. I picked six guys named Bob who are in Springfield, and one I left out, Bob Hobriggs. I did kind of want to talk about him. I may actually talk about him in a future video. He's kind of an obscure Hall of Famer, and he played in the 1950s. In fact, Hobriggs does have a 1957 Topps, and prior to that, he has a 1954 Gunther Beer, but again, that's a really obscure issue as well. So today I'm going to kind of focus on six ball players named Bob, who I think you guys probably might know, and they're pretty well known. The first guy I'm going to talk to you about today is Bob Cousy, and Bob Cousy's still alive. He's from my neck of the woods, and this is actually a really nice card, the 1957 Topps. I'm not entirely sure. I'm not convinced anyway that this is his rookie. He does have a 1951 Burke Ross, but I think he's in a Holy Cross uniform. I haven't seen that card in quite some time. And then he's got a 1956 Hood Milk Premium. Again, I'm not sure that, well, that could be his rookie. I'm not entirely sure though. And these things get a little confused in the weeds, if you will, of the hobby. So, in the meantime, I'm going to consider this his rookie, although I don't think it is. I picked this card up probably about 20 years ago, and I'm not going to tell you guys how much I paid for it, but it was well under $100. And I'll show you the back too. And it looks like this as your average 57 Topps. And I think I've told you guys in the past, the problem with this particular card and a lot of these cards is the centering issues, and they're very famous or legendary, if you will, for having snow and print problems. Although this one's pretty well centered, centering is obviously the huge issue of this set. But I do really enjoy this card, and I had to grab it because it's Bob Cousy, and he is obviously one of the best basketball players around. I also picked up this card too, and I paid 35 for this, uh, probably about the same time. And again, the Flair is a very nice set. You can complete this set. Well, it does get kind of tough because Wilt Chamberlain rookie and Oscar Robinson's rookie and Jerry West rookie as well. Although Jerry West does have a card prior to this particular set. A lot of people consider that his rookie too, and it's just a fantastic card. One of my biggest regrets, in fact, as a collector, was that I did not pick up the Jerry West rookie in the set for 175 when I had the chance. Instead, I grabbed a Wilt Chamberlain rookie for, I will say that, $200, and that is my cutoff for any card, and it has hurt me. In fact, I probably like this card better than his rookie. In fact, if I'm being honest, it is something that you don't really often see. I very rarely do I ever see this card at a show, even in Boston. But again, if you can pick up this card, I do kind of recommend it just because it is Bob Cousy. So I'm going to tell you a little bit about Bob Cousy and also share an article as well. And I'm going to share an article for each one of these players too. So Bob Cousy, his nickname is the Houdini of the hardwood, but I've also heard Houdini of the hard court. And he played from 1950 to 1963, and then again from 1969 to 1970. And at one point, I don't think the Celtics actually wanted him on the team. He was drafted by the Tri-City Blackhawks, and before he was going to play with that team, the team folded, and the Celtics they got him back and re-got him. They acquired him for the team, I believe, in a hotel room. And at some point, I'll probably be talking more about Bob Cousy. I'm going to give you a little rundown of his career because I think it's really impressive. He's a six-time champion with the Celtics and a 1957 MVP. He's also a two-time All-Star Game MVP, 1954 and again in 1957, and a two-time All-NBA second team, 1962 and 1963, and an eight-time assist leader from 1953 to 1960. He's also on the 25th, 35th, 50th, and 75th anniversary teams, and his number 14 is retired by the Celtics. And I'm really surprised that the Celtics have numbers left to give out. It seems like when you ever go to a Celtics game, every number is retired, which is ridiculous. He also won a championship with Holy Cross, too, in 1947. He also won a 1947 championship with the Holy Cross Crusaders, and that's a really, really good school. I kind of regret not going there, but in any event, water under the bridge. He also is a 2019 Presidential Medal of Freedom recipient as well, and he has 16,960 points, or 18.4 points per game, and 4,186 rebounds, or 5.2 rebounds per game, and 6,955 assists, or 7.5 assists per game. And he was the NBA assist leader 8 years in a row. I think that's really amazing. And so here's a article that I found on him, I think from 1964. This is from the Herald News, Passaic, New Jersey, February 22nd, 1963. Bob Cousy is Artist in Sport by Jim Murray. They brought the Mona Lisa to this country, and people knocked down doors to get a look at it for 5 seconds. Sarah Bernhardt made more final appearances than your wife's brother. Caruso had to die on it before they let him off stage. They would flock to see Paderewski, even if he were soloing on a player piano. Only in sports do we let our works of art and working artists fade out like old light bulbs while the clock rushes off in hot pursuit of the incandescence of a new one. Babe Ruth ended his career in the inglorious uniform of the Boston Braves, rapping an occasional home run in the National League hinterland before a select audience of umpires, ushers, and a few other people who had nothing better to do that afternoon. Joe Louis hit the tank towns as a wrestling referee. Some once great pitchers have been found in Fleabag hotel rooms. Only companions a bottle of rot gut. Jim Thorpe was digging a ditch. This then is to warn you that if you want to get the last look at the artist in the art, it behooves you to get out and see Robert Joseph Cousy, the best 6-foot 1-inch artist in basketball suit who ever lived. Will be giving his final seasonal recital, a figure for 2 hands, 2 legs, and 1 basket. Like Bernhard, he may be back, but only in the playoffs. A promise just as chimerical as a Hollywood marriage in which several things have to break just right in a 16 dog and cat fight. Perhaps it is presumptuous to compare a mere athlete, a basketball player at that, to a work of art. Perhaps Bob Cousy is more Boston Pops and Arthur Fiedler than Arturo Toscanini, more comic strip than a candidate for the Louvre, a rhyme, not a poem. But anyone who has ever seen him
with a basketball in his hand when the action was fluid, the juices flowing, and the stakes high. Would have to doubt it. Art is something that moves you and exhilarates or excites or disturbs, that lifts you out of yourself. If you are in a position to appreciate artistry in sport at all, if you are not athletically tone deaf or colorblind, Bob Cousy does all these things. The cold type of the catalog clearly points to artistry, not academic. The florid records, like most points scored, most field goals attempted, most rebounds made, belong to the registered Lanning Towers of the league. The pastel tones, like most assists per game, belong to Bob Cousy. 28, Boston vs. Minneapolis, February 27th, 1959. Most assists per half game and per quarter game also belong to Cousy. Someone has to get the ball for the dunkers, hang it up there in the basket where they can reach over and slap it in. Someone has to dribble the ball around the court when the hour is late and the lead is short and the floor is full of enemy players snapping at the ball like a human barracuda. Someone has to play to win the game rather than a record. This is Bob Cousy. Cousy was one of the first to dribble behind the back without losing possession of the ball. He was not the first, but the best at leading a fast break down the floor like the first con in prison bust out. He is a flying blur with a basketball in his hand and a look on his face as if the game were its lowermost in his mind. And what he's really trying to concentrate on is what his wife told him to bring home for dinner. Suddenly there's a whoosh and a 78-foot pass is orbiting around the basket. An easy 2-point tap-in for Tom Heinsohn, Satch Sanders, one of the Jones boys, one of the Celtics. A year from today, Bob Cousy will be in a sweatsuit in a musty gym in Boston, teaching some college boys the fine arts of a fine game. It's a game which has been good to him, but the opposite is true also. And it is a game which has been good to a lot of people who didn't reciprocate. The Celtics didn't even want Bob Cousy when he first came out of Holy Cross. A baker's dozen years ago, he was too short and too slow, they said. It was the narrowest escape any sport ever had. Picture leaving Red Grange on the ice truck or Babe Ruth in an orphan asylum, and you have the idea. If there had been no Cousy, then there may be no basketball today. He not only set a record for assists on the floor, he did it off too. His most important records were set in banquets attended, kids helped, time given. He not only assisted games of basketball, he assisted the institution of basketball. I have a personal measure of the class of Bob Cousy. In my time, I have gotten exactly 3 letters of appreciation from athletes I have written about. The first of these was from Bob Cousy. On or off the court, his works are art. You can't play long anymore, but for 19 minutes. You'll think there's 2 of him out there, so will the guy guarding him. It'll be 19 minutes of Rembrandt basketball on its last triumphal tour. You'll want to brag someday you saw it.
The next player that I want to tell you guys about is Bob Pettit, and this is a 1957 Topps. I bought this probably when I was about 18 years old or so. It was very early on in my collecting career, if you will, and I got it at auction, and I was thrilled, to tell you the truth. Again, you know what the funny thing is, like some of these cards, when you flip them over on the back, you're going to notice that the backs are upside down, while the fronts are up front, if you will. As you can tell here with the Bob Cousy again, when I flip it around, the back is right side up. This one is not, though, so it's kind of weird. I'm not sure exactly how they did that, how the printing process actually worked it for Topps in 1957, 1958 for these particular cards. And again, as I say, a lot of these cards, the borders are well, they're really off center for a lot of them, and they do have their issues. This card in particular, it is his rookie. Because Topps used a full body shot for the photo, I found that a lot of the cards of this particular Bob Pettit rookie, his head can be found out of focus, so you might want to keep that in mind. There is a card that actually I like a lot better, and it is this one right here. And I picked this one up at the National last year, and I've always wanted this card. In fact, I did have several copies of this card when I was going to college, and I sold them to pay for college. And I really kind of felt bad that the only card that I really kept was the Bob Cousy, and I didn't keep this particular card, and I didn't keep really any of the 61 flares. It's a classic design, and these cards aren't really that difficult to track down. They can be pretty expensive though, but there are a lot of them out there. This particular card can be very expensive. I think probably more expensive than his rookie card, in fact. But I did pick it up, and I really like the design, and I like the ball player as well. I think that Bob Pettit is, well, he's not totally forgotten about today. His statistics are crazy. I really was very impressed by his overall stats, and I wanted to tell you a little bit about him. I thought it would be crazy not to, actually. So he was born in 1932. He's still alive, and he was he played from 1954 to 1965 with Milwaukee for 1 year, and then the Hawks moved to St. Louis. And he's a center, a power forward, and he's the 1958 NBA champion. I think that they just edged out the Celtics in 1958 for the championship. He's a two-time MVP in 1956 and 1959, an 11-time All-Star, a 4-time All-Star Game MVP. That's crazy. In 1956, 1958, 59, and 1962. He's a 10-time All-NBA First Team, 1954 to 1964, a Second Team All-NBA, 1965. He's also the Rookie of the Year in 1955, and a 2-time scoring champion in 1956 and 59. And 59 seems like a really big year for him. He's also a 1956 rebounding leader as well. He's on the 25th, 35th, 50th, and 75th NBA anniversary team, and his number 9 is retired. When he retired, he had 20,880 points, or 26.4 points per game, 11,849 rebounds, or 16.2 rebounds per game, 2,369 assists, or 3.0 assists per game, and he went into the Hall of Fame in 1970. He also scored 50 points against the Celtics in the NBA Finals, winning 110 to 109. It was a record at the time. He also scored 57 points on February 18th, 1961 against the Pistons. He's only one of 3 players besides Wilt Chamberlain and Jerry Lucas to average more than 20 points and 20 rebounds in a season, which I think is really impressive.
This is from the Tyler Morning Telegraph, Tyler, Texas, April 3rd, 1970. Bob Pettit, a performer who has made himself a star, by Tom Williams. A bright future lies ahead for Pete Maravich, the all-time collegiate scoring leader from Louisiana State University. Recently signed a multi-million-dollar contract with Atlanta of the National Basketball Association. There are those who say the LSU Wiz is destined to go down in history as one of the great players in the NBA, but Maravich won't be the first Louisiana State University player to make it big in the Pro Cage Wars. Robert E. Leo Pettit played 11 years in the NBA before he retired in 1965, and before Maravich came along, he was the best thing that ever happened to LSU. Until Pistol Pete proves himself, Bob Pettit still is Louisiana State's most illustrious graduate of professional basketball. It wasn't easy for Pettit, although he scored 2,002 points in 3 years at LSU. He found it a lot different than the NBA. As a 6'9" center in college, he had a definite height advantage over his foes, but in the pro ranks, he had to adjust to a new position, forward, because he was, quote, too short, unquote, to play center with the big boys. Pettit made that adjustment, but it didn't come easy. In the summer of 1954, at the Milwaukee Hawks training camp, he ran into a 6'11" center named Charlie Scher, who was unlike anything Bob Pettit had ever run into before. Scher weighed 235 pounds to Pettit's 212. Scher took every advantage of that poundage difference, pushing Pettit and getting better position under the backboard. In his younger days, Scher had failed to make it with the Boston Celtics, and he wasn't about to let some rookie move him out of center position with the Hawks. The LSU star became confused and upset after a few days of watching Scher push Pettit around. Coach Red Holtzman called the rookie into his office. "I'm taking you out of the pivot and converting you into a forward," said Holtzman. "You'll get racked up like an 8-ball if you stay under the boards. It'll be hard adopting to a new style, but you'll do yourself and the team more good playing open game." To say the least, Pettit was stunned. After all, he had been an All-American center at LSU. He knew how to hook and jump, but he didn't know how to drive toward the basket. He didn't know how to take jump shots from 15 to 20 feet away. He didn't know how to set screens so his own teammates could shoot. Now he had to learn to be a forward, and the season would be opening in 2 weeks. The rest is history. Some players would have folded under that kind of pressure Pettit was facing, but he didn't let it get the best of him. He worked, and worked some more, but he was also used to this kind of work. When he was younger, he had been cut from the football, basketball, and baseball teams at Baton Rouge High. He had decided to make the basketball team, so he worked out at home and practiced every day. By the time he was a high school junior, he was 6'7" and a regular on the state championship team. Hard work had helped him just as much as his heights. In his 11 years in the NBA, all of them with the Hawks, who moved to St. Louis in 1955, Pettit scored 20,880 points for a 26.4 scoring average. He played in 792 regular season games and averaged 43% of them from the floor and 76% of them from the free throw line. In 9 of those years, the Hawks made it to the playoffs and won one league title. In the final game against the Celtics for the 1958 NBA crown, Pettit scored a basket with 1 second to play to give the Hawks a 110-109 victory. He scored 50 points in that game, including 19 of the Hawks' final 20 points. During his tenure in the NBA, Pettit had his share of injuries, and during the 1964-65 season, he was still a fine player, but those injuries were starting to add up. When he came back, he was not able to move as fast as before. Pettit made his decision to retire on March 1st, 1965, and he walked into Ben Kerner's office and told the Hawks owner he would retire at the end of the season. Kerner wanted Pettit to reconsider, but the gentleman from Baton Rouge stood firm. "I would never be content to play below my standards," he said. "In my heart, I feel this is the right time for me to step aside." At the end of that season, Pettit refused Kerner's offer to make him a coach. He packed up his things and headed home for Baton Rouge, where he could play golf and take care of his flourishing business. But he had made his mark in the NBA. He left it as a superstar. Now Maravich has his chance, and if the LSU product can do half as well as Bob Pettit, then he too will make his mark.
Up next is Bob Lanier, and I don't have his rookie. I've been looking for it for a long time. It has eluded me for years, but I do have his second year, which is right here. It's a 72 Topps. I love this set. As you guys know, I also love the 1971, and I sometimes love the 1973. And so I think this is actually a really fantastic card. And I've actually heard quite a number of stories about Bob Lanier over the years, which is why I wanted to grab one of his cards. In fact, I have two, and so this the 72 here, but I also have the 73 as well. And I actually like this card quite a bit. And as you know, some of the 73s are kind of drab, but some of them are actually quite nice. I do like the design as well. Some collectors don't really like the design. They think that Topps really took a back seat in 1973, and they may have a point there. They probably do, in fact. But the fun thing about the 71, 72, and 73 sets from Topps is that you can find a lot of Hall of Famers pretty cheap. And so if you wanted to go into vintage basketball, I would probably start with those three sets. I don't think it could hurt really much. If you're looking to buy and sell these cards, that might be a little bit of a problem. I don't think you're going to make a whole lot of money. However, there are just a lot of Hall of Famers to choose from. So Bob Lanier was born in 1948, and he passed away in 2022, I think in April. Bob Lanier played mostly with the Pistons from 1970 to 1980, and then with the Bucks from 1980 to 1984. If you're looking for a very rare Bob Lanier card, I can't think of anything rarer than his 1984 star. I think it's the Bucks night, but what happened was he retired, and they had to pull the card, and it is one of the true rarities of the 1980s. And so I've actually seen it maybe once or twice, and I'll be talking more about Star Company basketball cards because I think that they are really fantastic, and I do collect them, and there's a lot. I just say there's a lot there to chew on. But in any event, with Bob Lanier, you can grab a lot of his cards. They're not expensive. So he is a 8-time All-Star from 1972 to 1975, and then again from 1977 to 1979 and 1982. He's a 1974 All-Star Game MVP and an NBA All-Rookie First Team in 1971. His 1971 Topps is quite nice. Some people they have a problem with the jersey. I think it's a warm-up jersey. It is kind of a difficult card, at least in my opinion it is. I've had really kind of difficulties trying to acquire one, and someday I will. It just hasn't happened in forever. So his number has been retired by both teams, in fact, and by the time he retired, he had 19,248 points, or 20.1 points per game, and 9,698 rebounds, or 10 rebounds per game, and 1,100 blocks, or 1.5 blocks per game. And unfortunately, he had a history of knee problems, and before he was drafted, I believe he underwent a series of knee operations, and his knees just plagued him throughout his career. Otherwise, he would have put up better numbers, and I think they realized this, even though he is in the Hall of Fame, that his knees were just completely shot. And he did make the Hall of Fame in 1992. Again, I've heard a lot about Bob Lanier over the years, and I wish I could have got to see him play. I didn't get to see any of these guys play, which is really too bad. And I guess I just grew up in the wrong time, and that's all. In any event, let me get to an article on Bob Lanier.
This is from the Buffalo News, February 1st, 1992. Lanier hoops it all over Hall of Fame election, by Mike Harrington. For a player who was cut from his high school basketball team, Bob Lanier turned out just fine. Friday afternoon, the former Bennett High and St. Bonaventure University star reached the pinnacle of his sport by being elected to the Basketball Hall of Fame. I'm really excited, Lanier said by phone from Washington, D.C., where he was visiting his daughter, Kim, a Howard University freshman. I was trying to be cool about it because you don't want to get disappointed if you don't make it. But ever since I got the call from Hall Executive Director Joseph O'Brien, I've almost been out of breath the whole time. The 43-year-old Lanier played in the National Basketball Association from 1970 to 1984 with Detroit and Milwaukee, compiling 19,248 career points and 9,698 career rebounds. He played in 8 NBA All-Star games, earning MVP honors in 1974. Lanier will be inducted in a May 11th ceremony in Springfield, Mass., the Hall's home. He will be joined by 8 others. His class includes Jack Ramsey, whose 864 career coaching victories with 4 teams, including the Buffalo Braves, ranks second in league history, and ex-Phoenix Sun Connie Hawkins. The other inductees will be St. John's coach Lou Carnesecca, former Marquette coach, and Al McGuire, the late Phil Wolpert, former coach of University of San Francisco, former Soviet national team star Sergei Belov, and the first woman players elected, Della State star Louisa Harris, and AAU standout Nara White. Former Niagara University and Houston Rockets guard Calvin Murphy was one of the nominees who was not elected. I never thought about it, making the Hall while he was playing, Lanier said. It didn't come up until after I was out of the game. It's something for somebody else to decide. Lanier was a 6'9" star at Bennett from 1964 to 1966. He failed to make the varsity team his sophomore year after coach Nick Mogovero opted to keep him off the club so Lanier's coordination and stamina could catch up to his size. Lanier spent his sophomore year working out at the Maston Boys Club and was invited to try out the next season by new Bennett coach Fred Swezbicka, who is still a teacher at Bennett. You could see how he handled the ball, that soft touch on his shot, how he could drive the baseline. The kids called him Feet because he had all those size 19.5 shoes. I always remember seeing this big kid doing his push-ups and jumping jacks warming up in the gym. The 2 seasons he coached Lanier were the only years Swezbecka coached high school basketball. From Bennett, Lanier went to St. Bonaventure for a 3-year career that resulted in 2,067 points, 27.5 points per game, and 1,180 rebounds, 15.7. This is a long way from not making your youth high school team, Lanier said. It makes me think of all the great people in Buffalo, people like Fred Swezbecka, who decided I could be a player on his high school team, and I think of St. Bonaventure and those great people like Larry Wise. The Bonnies went 65-12 in Lanier's 3 seasons, advancing to the 1970 Final Four, but Lanier missed those games against Jacksonville and New Mexico State after suffering a knee injury in the regional final against Villanova. Lanier said his two greatest memories of basketball came when he received prolonged standing ovation prior to the 1979 NBA All-Star Game in Detroit and the ride back to Olean after Bonner's Final Four team landed in the Buffalo airport. We got beat in the NCAAs. All the way to Olean, the road was lined with people. Today, Lanier is founder of Bob Lanier Enterprises, a Milwaukee-based advertising specialty company. He also founded the Bob Lanier Center for Youth in Buffalo, which works to keep inner-city children in school. He travels widely as an NBA spokesman delivering stay-in-school messages, and he is now one of 188 individuals who can be called Hall of Famers.
Okay, so this is a player that I've been dying to add to my collection for a very long time. And again, he's someone who I've never seen play, but I've heard a lot about him, and it is Bob McAdoo. And this is his rookie. I just acquired it not too long ago. And this one, really, I had to track down. I've seen a few examples, and I didn't like the ones that I saw, so I waited. I'm not the most patient dude in the world when it comes to card collecting. I should be. I used to be more patient than I am now. It's just that this particular card has dogged me for quite some time. I didn't pay a whole lot for it, and as you can see, it is, well, I'll show you. It does have some issues. Centering is a huge problem here. And then you can see, I'll show you in the back. The back, there's some centering issues as well, but as I always tell you guys, buy and pick a card that A, you can afford, and B, if it's rare, you might need to pick it up at the time, or if it's very expensive and it's at a great price, pick it up and you might be able to upgrade later on. For some cards, I'm okay with the card being a little off. If it's a rare card, or if I know that I won't be able to upgrade, and if it's also expensive. Some cards I definitely want to upgrade, and I wait. So it all depends, really. But the Bob McAdoo here is a card that I really wanted for my collection. And I also think, too, that it's a key card in the set. There are not a whole lot of key cards in the 1973 set, so this is a key rookie. And he does have a number of cards, and he's got actually a few modern cards that were signed that I actually like, and I may want to add one or two to my collection. I know that sounds kind of strange coming from a vintage guy, but there are some modern cards that look really nice, and these I think were from Panini, and I know I've heard a lot of stories about Panini being a horror show from a lot of the modern guys here, but I'm a design guy, so I like the design, and again, he's still alive. In fact, Bob McAdoo was born in 1951. And his playing career was from 1972 to 1986. He's a two-time champion of 1982 and 1985. He's the 1975 MVP, five-time All-Star 1974 to 1978, 1975 All-NBA First Team, 1974 All-NBA Second Team, 1973 Rookie of the Year, 1973 All-Rookie Team, three-time scoring champion, 1974 to 1976, and he was included as a member of the 75th anniversary team. When he retired in 1986, he had 18,787 points, or 22.1 points per game, 8,048 rebounds, or 9.4 rebounds per game, 1,147 blocks, or 1.5 blocks per game, and he made the Hall of Fame in 2000. Unfortunately, I never got to see him play that I remember. I only really started watching basketball on TV in about 1985, 1986 or so. I think I may have actually seen a few games in the very early 80s, but from what I've heard, those games were actually pre-taped, pre-recorded, and then broadcast later on. So I have no idea whether or not those particular games were current. Basketball in the 1980s, or at least the early 1980s, really had some issues, especially with broadcasting. So I never really got to see any very early 80s games that I'm aware of. They all really kind of started in the mid 1980s for me, and I really started only getting interested in basketball because I had a gym teacher by the name of Mr. Graves who kind of showed me the ropes about how to play the sport, and then kind of got me interested in all the players going on and all the. And at the time too, in Boston, we had the big three: Larry Bird, Kevin McHale, and Robert Parrish. And so those guys were really fun to watch. And Mr. Graves really kind of showed me like what was going on in basketball at the time, and I really appreciated that because I do love the sport quite a bit. And basketball as a hobby goes, it is pretty cheap if you're looking to build a vintage collection. As I say, 1970s and 1980s basketball cards are not that expensive for the most part. I think they really kind of get more expensive as the 1986 Fleer goes. And I've kind of noticed this too, that once the 1986 Fleer started to spike, a lot of collectors went over to the 1987 Fleer cards and grabbed those, and those cards can be kind of expensive too. What's really kind of funny though is that the 1972 and 1973 and 1971 cards, I don't think that they're as expensive as the 1986 and 1987 Fleer, which I think it's generational for sure, but I think it's kind of funny. So I found a really interesting article about Bob McAdoo, which I think you guys are going to enjoy.
This is from the News and Observer, Raleigh, North Carolina, October 14th, 2000. McAdoo Has His Day by Peter May. Springfield, Mass. He knows his timing could have been better. Bob McAdoo came into the NBA from North Carolina as a rare underclassman, joining a third-year expansion team, Buffalo Braves, in 1973. He was a Knick after the Walt Frazier, Willis Reed days, a Celtic between the John Havlicek and Larry Bird eras, and a Piston when it was wiser to be anything but. But Friday night, on the stage at the Springfield Civic Center, Robert Allen McAdoo Jr. became one of basketball's elite with his induction into the Hall of Fame. Earlier in the day, he said, matter-of-factly, "This is the greatest thing that has ever happened to me in my life." McAdoo is a native of Greensboro, one of 6 inductees in the class of 2000. Joining him were former Pistons guard Isaiah Thomas, Tennessee women's coach Pat Summitt, legendary high school coach Morgan Wooten, and former college coach and administrator C.M. Newton. Danny Biaston, a man who saved pro basketball by introducing the 24-second clock, was inducted posthumously. McAdoo was ushered into the hall by his first pro coach, the estimable Jack Ramsey, who said McAdoo was one of the 5 best players he ever coached. The others? Bill Walton, Billy Cunningham, Clyde Drexler, and Hal Greer. Ramsey said that it was an injustice that McAdoo was not selected as one of the top 50 NBA players. On Friday, McAdoo turned to Thomas and said, "I know you were disappointed you didn't make the 1992 Dream Team. I was disappointed I didn't make the top 50, but this tops both. This is my gold medal." McAdoo was traded to the Celtics at the wrong time for him, but actually ended up helping general manager Red Auerbach build his Bird-led team of the 1980s. 7 months after joining the Celtics, Auerbach traded McAdoo to Detroit for number 1 picks, which were used in the trade that brought Robert Parrish and Kevin McHale to Boston. "Every team has its ups and downs," McAdoo said. "I just happened to be traded to them when they were in one of their down times." McAdoo was a 5-time All-Star, 3-time scoring leader, Rookie of the Year, and MVP in 1975. He went from being a scoring machine to a role player in his later years, winning 2 rings with the Pat Riley Lakers in 1982 and 1985. He since has joined Riley's Miami coaching staff. As for the other inductees on hand for that ceremony, Newton was inducted as a contributor. "Here I was, an average college player, maybe a good college coach, and to have this happen is something I never dreamed of," Newton said. "I thought my Hall of Fame would be the nomination." Newton was hailed for his efforts to integrate the SEC when he coached Alabama. Thomas arrived from Indianapolis, where the Pacers not only lost to Denver Thursday, but lost guard Jalen Rose for up to 6 weeks because of a broken wrist. Thomas had no speech planned. "I am just going to talk from my heart," he said. "Tough news for collegiate women players who don't wear orange and white," Summitt said. "She has no plans to retire. She's only 48, but this will be her 27th season at Tennessee. She has won 6 national titles." Summitt said it felt like nothing else to join the Hall of Fame. "I feel like a basketball angel in heaven," she said. Wooten, the high school coach at DeMatha High School outside Washington, D.C., has seen a dozen of his players go on to the NBA. He called his selection an unimaginable thrill.
So this last player, I don't actually have a card of. It's Bob Slick Leonard. And as you can see, that Lakers jersey is really nice. I like the design quite a bit. And speaking of design, if you guys haven't seen the Flair logo for the Lakers from 1961, I'm still trying to figure this one out. Apparently, that logo was never used, and I'm not sure where they came up with that logo in the 1961 Flair set for the Lakers, but it's really interesting. In any event, Bob Slick Leonard, he was born in 1932 and he passed away quite recently in 2021. He played from 1956 to 1961 with the Minneapolis Lakers and the LA Lakers, and with the Chicago Bulls, and with the Chicago Zephyrs and Baltimore Bullets. The Zephyrs, I'm not even sure what a Zephyr is, to tell you the truth. I just have to look into all the stuff because I think it's kind of fascinating, and I know once I do, I'm going to go into a rabbit hole or two just to figure all this stuff out, and who knows where I'm going to end up. I always do this too. I always start reading one article, and then one article turns into the entire newspaper. So, the life of me, I guess. Someone's got to do it, right? In any event, he's more well known as a Hall of Fame coach with the ABA Pacers, and with them, he took the team to 3 championships. 1970, 1972, and 1973, and he also coached the Zephyrs for a short time after his playing career. And the Pacers are a really fascinating team, especially with the ABA, and I will be covering that team specifically with Larry Bird in an upcoming video. And I think it's just absolutely fascinating. The ABA to me is a really fascinating history that I'm going to talk about more coming up. But in this time, I want to tell you a little bit about Bob Leonard, and I find a really interesting article.
This is from the Tipton County Tribune, Tipton, Indiana, April 14th, 2021. Indiana icon Slick Leonard dies. Former Hoosiers All-American, Pacers coach, and Hall of Famer was 88. By Michael Marotte. Bobby Slick Leonard was selected as the ABA's greatest coach. Hall of Fame player George McInnes considered him a genius. On Tuesday, the Indiana Pacers announced that the man who had led them to 3 ABA championships during a Hall of Fame coaching career and was selected to the 1963 NBA All-Star has died. No details about the 88-year-old Leonard were provided, but he had been in failing health in recent years. He was the greatest, McInnes said in March. He loved all of his guys, and yes, he had his days. If you got on the wrong side of him, it wasn't going to be a good deal for you. But McInnes added, there was a big difference between Leonard and Indiana Hoosiers coach Bob Knight. After Leonard ripped into you and wore you out, he would take you out for a beer and say, you know I love you. I'm doing this for your own good. Leonard became one of the crown princes of Indiana basketball. Yes, he went 573 and 534 in 14 seasons as a coach, winning 529 in 12 seasons with the Pacers. But the legacy went far deeper. The star tennis player at Terre Haute Gestmeyer High School chose to play basketball at nearby Indiana University. He wound up leading the Hoosiers to 2 Big Ten titles, was a 2-time All-American, and made the winning free throws to give Indiana the 1953 national championship. Decades later, he was selected as one of the 50 greatest players in school history and was part of the Hoosiers All-Century team. He has meant as much as anyone in the state of Indiana when it comes to the game of basketball. New Indiana coach Mike Woodson said, he played the game with great flair. He coached with undeniable passion. His smile put everyone at ease. The man was a champion through and through, whether it was with the Pacers organization or at Indiana University. Without question, he was a Hall of Fame human being. After serving in the U.S. Army in the mid-1950s, Leonard played professionally for 7 years with the Minneapolis Los Angeles Lakers and was named an NBA All-Star in 1963. His greatest moments as a professional came with the budding franchise that hired him in 1968-69 and that he worked with for more than half a century. Pacers fans will remember Bobby Slick Leonard as the spirit of our franchise, team owner Herb Simon said in a statement. With the charisma, intensity, and wit to match his nickname, Slick made us champions. He was our biggest fan and our most loving critic, and he personified Pacers basketball for generations of Hoosier families. Most importantly, though, Slick and his wife Nancy are our family, and his passing leaves an unfillable void in the hearts of everyone associated with this organization. Leonard took the Pacers to the ABA Finals in his first season and 4 more times took the next 6 years, winning titles in 1969-70, 71-72, and 72-73. He was the best coach I ever played for in last-shot pressure situations, McInnes said. In the 7th game, he would change the entire offense. It was genius. I think that's why, if you look at the Pacers, they won all 3 championships, I believe, in 7th games on the road. Leonard did more than just win, too. In 1977, the folksy Leonard and his wife helped organize a telethon that saved a franchise facing financial ruin after moving from the ABA to the NBA. He was let go after the 1979-1980 season, failing to post a winning record in the Pacers' first 4 NBA seasons, but he has re-emerged as the color commentator on Pacers television broadcasts in 1985. He later moved into the radio booth, where the plain-talking, storytelling Leonard coined his trademark phrase, "Boom, baby," whenever Pacers players made three-pointers. Leonard was inducted into the Naismith Memorial Basketball Hall of Fame in 2014. He was also a member of the Indiana Basketball Hall of Fame and the Indiana Sports Writers and Broadcasters Hall of Fame, and was the first person inducted into the Indiana University Sports Hall of Fame. His victory total with the Pacers, 529, hangs on the banner in the Bankers Life Fieldhouse rafters. Governor Eric Holcomb called him the embodiment of basketball and an Indiana icon. His presence in the arena in our state will be deeply missed, he said in a statement. You can't find anyone who doesn't love Slick. Leonard is survived by his wife. They have 5 children, 12 grandchildren, and 6 great-grandchildren.
Guys, thank you so much for stopping by. I greatly appreciate it, as always. If you have a favorite player that I discussed here or one of their cards, let me know. I'd love to hear your stories about these players and the cards themselves. And any comments you have, I always try to respond to. And until the next time, I will talk to you later. Have a good one. Bye. Until some guy named Giannis, and I'm going to screw the last name up here. And Antilopolo, I have no idea. You guys would probably know better about modern stuff than me. Let's try it again. I'm just going to call this guy Giannis. I've never seen him play. I can't even pronounce his last name. Yeah, English is... guys, pay attention in school, will you? Don't be like me. I almost want to call this guy's last name Antelope, but I don't think that's right. Anyway,
Sweziba said Swedzibika. Oh my God. How do we even pronounce this? Oh my Lord. All right, let's try it again. Is that a word? SZWEJBKA. That's just letters, man. What? That doesn't say. What does that spell? Fred Swezbica? That's what I'm going to say it is. I'm not even sure. Man, I do not have a mastery of the English language. That's for damn sure. By new Bennett coach Fred Swezbica. You know, my God, no way. You could predict that he had a magical ability about him, said oh my God, this word is going to drive me. I'm going to have nightmares about this. SZWEJBKA. What a nightmare.